Let's get some more on the breaking news involving a vaccine. Our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, is with us. Sanjay, so what's your analysis based on everything we know? Could the vaccine that all of us have been waiting for, could it be possible that it will come over the next several months?
Yeah, Wolf, I think that there's nothing in this first peer-reviewed study now of a U.S. vaccine candidate. There's nothing in the study to suggest that anything has derailed, but it's still very early days, Wolf, very early days. Let me just tell you a couple things about this. They basically gave a dose of the vaccine to 45 healthy individuals between the ages of 18 and 55. And then they gave a second dose about a month later, about 28 days later. So remember that. This is a 2-dose vaccine that they're looking at here to try and get the response that they're hoping for. It seemed relatively safe, meaning that there were no significant side effects that actually stopped the trial. But let me show you, if I can, just some of the side effects that they did see. And they gave this medication at different dosings. At the sort of middle dose and the higher dose, basically everybody who got the vaccine did have some sort of side effect. Some people had more than one side effect. They appeared to be transient. They went away. But again, Wolf, these side effects are something that they're going to be paying attention to. And this was in 45 healthy people between the ages of 18 and 55. The whole process, Wolf, is going fast. They're through phase 1. They're going to be starting phase 3 at the end of this month. Typically, that takes years to get to that point, and they've obviously done that in months. The big question, Wolf, does it work, right? Is it actually going to provide protection so that people don't get infected with this virus? And we don't know the answer to that yet. This vaccine did appear to make antibodies in the people that it was given to, but how well those antibodies will work, we have to wait and see by these other trials. There's a thing, Wolf, you'd love to have some sort of correlate measure when you do these trials. Like I'd love to measure something in inches or pounds or meters. Unfortunately, we don't have that, so I can't tell you this works X amount well yet. The only way to really know that is to study this in larger and larger groups of people and see if, in fact, it protects them. So that's basically what they're going to be doing now over the next several months, Wolf, again, starting at the end of this month, to really find out, A, it looks like it seems to be generally safe. Let's make sure it stays safe in older people and people who have pre-existing conditions. And let's also make sure it works.
Yeah.
It actually protects people against the infection, Wolf.
Yeah, they're pretty encouraged. I spoke to someone who's been well briefed on this earlier in the day, Sanjay. They're going to start the next phase with about 30,000 participants July 27th. And there'll be 2 phases. They'll get a shot on July 27th, and 4 weeks later, another shot. What I was told, Sanjay, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you're right, 45 people were involved in this first phase. 15 of them got a low dose of about 25 micrograms. 15 got a medium dose of 100 micrograms, and 15 got a high dose of 250 micrograms. And they discovered those who got the high dose, 250 micrograms, they are the ones who had some potentially significant side effects. The low dose really wasn't apparently all that effective, but that middle dose of 100 micrograms, the side effects were very marginal, they say, and the next phase, the 30,000 or so individuals, will get the 100 micrograms. They're not going to go with the 250 micrograms, so potentially that's significant, right?
Yeah, I think they really are zeroing in on the right dose here. When the trial first started, they were just using the lowest dose, that 25 microgram dose, again, twice, getting that two shots 1 month apart. And they were told at that point, as part of the trial, you need to figure out some various dosing regimens. And that's what then started the 100 microgram dosing and the 250 microgram. You're absolutely right, Wolf. At the highest dose, the 250 micrograms, that's where they saw the most serious adverse effects. We can show again what some of those side effects were. At the highest dose, there were people who had more than one of these serious systemic effects. Again, they were transient. They didn't last very long, but that was concerning. And again, these are healthy individuals. So we want to make sure, as you have people who are older, who are more vulnerable, that these side effects don't pose a bigger problem. But that 100 microgram dose does seem to be where they're going to be focusing their attention. People in that dosing group, Wolf, I will say, did have side effects as well. They seem to not be as severe as the highest group, but that's going to be something they got to keep an eye on. The whole goal of this phase 1 study, the real goal is to test safety more than anything else. And again, there wasn't anything in this trial that said, okay, we need to stop the trial, that there were side effects that were so concerning, but there were side effects.
Yeah.
And again, in healthy individuals, let's see how this plays out as you incorporate more and more people.
As they go to the next, this, a large group, 30,000 individuals are about to be tested. It's one of several studies, vaccine studies underway. There's the Moderna study we're talking about now, the Oxford University study in England that we know about. Johnson & Johnson has a vaccine study that's underway. 2 other studies, a German firm, BioNTech, and there's Novavax right now. So there's a lot of these vaccine studies underway. Apparently, the Moderna study and the Oxford study seem to be the most promising. Is that what you're hearing as well?
I think they're the ones that are moving along the quickest right now. And now we've actually seen some peer-reviewed data on this U.S. vaccine candidate. I think it's going to be a little bit of a question mark, Wolf. Does being first necessarily equate with being the ideal candidate ultimately? There's a couple things. We are going to see data from some of these other vaccine candidates. And Wolf, we're seeing something unusual here in that so many different platforms of vaccines are being tried. Typically, when you think of a vaccine, you think I'm going to give a little bit of the virus to the person and their body is going to make the antibodies in response to that. There's other ones where you're giving sort of a dead virus or attenuated virus and see how the body responds to this. The Moderna one that we're talking about is a sort of genetic vaccine. You're giving a little blueprint of a part of the virus, and you're letting the body make antibodies in response to that. So these are all these different mechanisms. Ultimately, the real key is going to be which one works the best and has the lowest side effect profile. And again, we're getting data here, and the data does look, I would say, promising. Certainly nothing to say that the trial shouldn't continue. But I'm really anxious to see this other data. Wolf, you got to remember, as much as we've been talking about this over the last several months, this is the first data that we've seen in a peer-reviewed journal out of any of these U.S. vaccine candidates. So that's significant in and of itself, but it's early data. Let's see how the next few months really will play out.
Yeah, and let's not forget, these were 45 individuals involved in this phase. They're about to start the next phase with some 30,000 Americans all over the country. Sanjay, stay with us. I also want to bring in Dr. Leana Wen, who's joining us, the former health commissioner of Baltimore. Dr. Wen, you just heard Sanjay report on the results of this phase of the Moderna vaccine, that one candidate. How promising of a development do you see it as potentially, and what questions do you have?
Well, it's promising, although we do need to see what happens next. The next phase, phase 3, is going to be the most critical because, as Sanjay was describing, that's when we can really prove that there is actually immunity, there is protection for those individuals who get this vaccine. I think there are still going to be other questions too. I do agree that maybe there will be even multiple vaccine candidates that end up getting approved. But it's also possible that none of them will be even close to 100% effective. In fact, I would be very happy if they could be even at the level of a flu vaccine, which is 40 to 60% effective. And then there's the question, too, of how long is that immunity going to last? Do you need to get booster shots? Do you need to get it every year or even more often as we do with the flu vaccine? And also, I worry about the vaccine denial movement, the anti-vaxxer science denial movement. In order for us to get to herd immunity, we need about 60 to 80% of people to be able to get the vaccine. And I hope that we'll do a lot of public education between now and then about the importance of safe, effective vaccines and how that is going to be one answer for us, a key for us to move forward through this pandemic.